Welcome to episode 81 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tales of Troy and the story of the Truce. The Argive princes assembled in the house of Agamemnon, their commander-in-chief, and to them came Ajax, exulting at his prowess and heralded by loud acclaim. A fat bull, 5 years old, was sacrificed to Zeus, and the victor was given the best pieces cut from the back. When they had eaten and drunk their fill, Nestor opened the assembly of princes with the proposal not to fight on the following day, but call a truce, fetch the bodies of the fallen Argive heroes from wagons drawn by oxen and mules, and burn them near the ships, so that when they returned to their own country, each could bring the children of his kinsmen the bones of those who had belonged to them. His words were greeted with a burst of applause. The Trojans, on their part, assembled in front of the king's palace on the Acropolis. They were bewildered and dismayed at the outcome of the battle. Wise Antenor was the first to speak. "Mark my words, Trojans and allies," he said. "Mark my words, Trojans and allies," he said. "We have broken faith. As long as we persist in fighting contrary to our solemn oath, the oath which Pandarus violated, no good can come to our people. I, for one, shall not hide what I think, and herewith counsel you to hand over to the Argives Helen with all her treasure." When he had spoken, Paris rose and replied, "If you have proposed this in all seriousness, Antenor, then the gods must indeed have robbed you of your senses. As for me, I shall say straight out that I do not intend ever to give up Helen. Let them have the treasure we took from Argos for all I care, and I shall gladly add to it from my stores as much as they demand in recompense." After his son Priam, the aged king spoke in calm tones. "Do not let us undertake anything further this day, my friends. Distribute their evening fare to the men, place your guards, give yourselves up to sleep. Tomorrow, Idaeus, our herald, shall go to the Argive fleet, convey the peaceful words of my son Paris, and at the same time discover whether they are willing to call a truce until we have burned our dead. If we cannot come to an agreement, let war be resumed when the burial mounds are heaped." And so it was done. The next morning, Idaeus, the herald, appeared before the Achaeans and reported the offer of Paris and the king's proposal. The Argive heroes listened to what he had to say and remained silent for a long time. At last, Diomedes spoke. "Fellow Argives," he said, "do not so much as dream of taking the treasure, not even if they give you Helen along with it. The most credulous among you can easily see from this proposal that the Trojans know they are doomed." All the princes shouted approval, and now Agamemnon turned to the herald. "You have heard what the Danai have resolved in regard to your offer, but we shall not deny you the burning of your dead. The Thunderer himself shall bear witness to our consent." And saying this, he raised his scepter toward heaven. Idaeus returned to Troy and found the Trojans gathered in assembly. When he reported the reply, the city was quickly astir. Some fetched the bodies of the dead, others felled trees on the mountain slopes, and the same was happening in the Argive camp. Peacefully, foe met foe in the beams of the morning sun. Each looked for his dead on the other side of the field. And as for the fallen warriors lying on the ground, stripped of their armor and covered with blood, it was difficult to distinguish friend from enemy. Their lids red with tears, the Trojans washed the blood from the limbs of the corpses, and there were many more slain Trojans than Argives. But Priam had forbidden loud lament, so they lifted them silently into the wagons, heaped the pyres, and locked their sorrow in their hearts. The Achaeans did the same. They too were sad, and when the blaze had died down, they returned to their ships. The work had taken up the whole day. It was time for the evening meal. From Lemnos, Euaeus, son of Jason, and Hypsile had sent cargo ships laden with fragrant wines, many thousand jars for the Argives to whom he was bound by ties of hospitality. These arrived at a very opportune moment. A great banquet was spread, and when the Argives had seen to the dead, they sat down at the festal board. The Trojans, too, wanted to refresh themselves from the toils of battle, but Zeus left them no peace. All through the night he startled them with crashes of thunder, repeated at intervals, and each seemed to forebode new disaster. Terror gripped their hearts, and they did not dare touch their lips to the cup without first pouring a libation to the angry Father of God. A Trojan victory. But for the moment Zeus withheld decision. "Mark my words well," he said to the assembled gods and goddesses on the following morning. "If on this day one of you dares to help either the Danai or the Trojans, I shall seize the rebel and hurt him into the chasm of Tartarus, as far below earth as earth lies beneath heaven. Then I shall bolt the iron gate which guards the brazen threshold of the underworld, and never again shall the evildoer see the light of Olympus. If you doubt my power to carry out this threat, fasten a gold chain to heaven. Hold fast to it, every one of you, and see if you can pull me down to earth. But more likely I shall draw you upward, and the land and sea with you, and knot the chain to the peak of Olympus, so that the whole earth will float in air." The gods grew humble at these imperious words. But Zeus himself mounted his thunder chariot and drove to Mount Ida, where a grove and an altar were sacred to him. There he seated himself on the summit and surveyed the city of Troy and the Achaean camp with exultant pride. Everywhere men were girding on their armor. The Trojans were fewer in number, but they too were impatient for battle, for they were fighting in defense of their women and children. Presently their gates flew open, and the host thronged out swiftly in chariots and on foot with clatter and cries. That morning both sides shared the fortunes of war equally, and both Argive and Trojan blood dyed the earth. But when the sun was steep in the sky at noon, Zeus placed 2 lots of death in his golden scales, held them in the middle, and weighed them in air, and the part which held doom for the Argives dropped earthward, with the part holding the Trojan lot rose to heaven. When thunder and lightning he warned the Danai of the change in their fate. When they saw this, they shook with foreboding, and even the strongest quailed. Idomeneus, Agamemnon, and the 2 Ajaxes faltered where they stood. Aged Nestor alone still fought in the van, but only because he could not retreat, for Paris had hit one of his horses between the forelocks, and the animal reared high in terror, and then writhed on the ground with the pain of the wound. While Nestor attempted to cut loose the reins of the second horse with his sword, Hector, who was pursuing the Greeks, rode up to him in his chariot. And now the life of noble Nestor would have been forfeit had not Diomedes hastened to his aid. The son of Tydeus shouted reproach to Odysseus, who had turned his back on the foe and was fleeing to the ships, and tried in vain to urge him back. Then he placed himself in front of Nestor's horses, entrusted them to Sthenelus and Eurymedon, and took the old man in his chariot, which he drove straight at Hector. He cast his spear, and though he missed Hector himself, shot his charioteer, Nippeus, through the breast, so that he fell to the ground. Deeply as Hector mourned the death of his friend, he let him lie and called another to drive the horses. Then he rushed at Diomedes. Now had Hector measured swords for the son of Tydeus, he would have doomed, and the Father of Gods knew very well that with his fall the tide of battle was bound to turn, and that the Argives would take Troy that very day. Zeus did not wish this to happen, so he tossed a bolt of lightning to earth, close to the chariot of Diomedes. In terror, Nestor dropped the reins and cried, "Flee, Diomedes! Do you not see that Zeus does not want you to conquer today?" "You are right," answered the son of Tydeus. But my heart would burst if in time to come Hector would say in an assembly of Trojans, the son of Tydeus was afraid and retreated to the ships. But Nestor said, and do you think that the Trojan men and women whose friends and husbands you killed will believe Hector when he calls you a coward? With these words, he guided the horses away from the battlefield, and Hector, racing after them with his Trojans, cried, Son of Tydeus, up to now the Argives have honored you at their banquets in an assembly. From this moment on they will scorn you. It is not you who will vanquish Troy and take our women away on your ships. Diomedes wavered. 3 times he turned over in his mind whether or not he should head for the field again and drive straight at derisive Hector. But 3 times Zeus thundered up on Ida with an echoing crash, and so Diomedes continued to flee and Hector to pursue. Hera watched and was dismayed. In vain she tried to move Poseidon, the special patron of the Danai, to help his people. But he did not venture to act contrary to the command of his powerful brother. By this time the fugitives had reached the trench and wall in front of the fleet, and Hector would surely have invaded their camp and tossed a firebrand on the ships, had not Agamemnon, heartened by Hera, gathered the frightened Danai about him. He boarded the great ship of Odysseus, which towered far above the rest. Here he stood erect on the deck, flung his mantle of shimmering crimson across his shoulder, and called down to the one side where the house of Ajax, the son of Telamon, stood, and to the other where the son of Peleus was encamped. Shame on you! Where is that great courage you vaunted when you emptied your cups? We have yielded a single man to Hector alone. Soon he will set our ships afire. O Zeus, what curse have you laid upon me? If ever I have honored you with prayers and offerings, do not let the Trojans vanquish me here by my own ships. So he spoke with tears, and the Father of gods had compassion on him, and set the Argives a happy omen, an eagle which gripped in its claw a fawn and dropped it before the altar the Achaeans had reared to Zeus. The hearts of the Argives beat high at this sign, and again they bounded forward to confront the invading foe. Ahead of all the rest was Diomedes, who leaped the trench with his horses and drove his spear into the back of Ajax of Troy, who had wheeled his chariot about for fight. After him came Agamemnon and Menelaus, and then the 2 Ajaxes, after them Idomeneus, and Marinus, and Eueles. Teucer was the 9th. Protected by the shield of Ajax, his half-brother, he shot one Trojan after another into the dust. He had just mowed down the 8th when Agamemnon looked at him with flashing eyes and exclaimed, That is the way, my friend! Go on like this and be a beacon among the Argives. If Zeus and Athene grant us the conquest of Troy, you shall be the first to receive a gift of honor from me. I need no promises, my king, Teucer said. I shall not spare myself. I am putting forth all my strength. But as yet I have not succeeded in shooting down that mad dog. And he launched his arrow at Hector. It missed, and struck a bastard son of King Priam, Gorgythian, whose head, weighed by the helmet, sank to one side, just as the poppy bends under a spring shower. Teucer sent a second arrow after the first, but Apollo diverted it from its mark, and it pierced the breast of Acatopolemius, who was driving Hector's horses. This friend, too, Hector let go, though he was filled with bitter sorrow for him, and he called a third to his chariot. Then, with burning zest, he dashed forward, and just as Teucer was again bending his bow, Hector hit his collar bow with a long, jagged stone. The bowstring snapped, his wrist grew numb, and he sank on his knees. But Ajax took care of his brother. He circled him, keeping him covered with his shield, until 2 friends lifted him from the ground and carried him moaning to the ships. And now Zeus again kindled the courage of the Trojans. Eyes glowing with rage, Hector stormed after the Argives as a hound pursued a boar over the wooded hills, and slew everyone who came within hurling distance. Again, the Argives were crowded back to their ships and prayed to their gods in anguish of soul. Hera heard them and was moved to pity. She turned to Athene. "The Danae are dying," she said. "Has not the time come for us to save them? See how Hector is harassing them, what carnage he has wrought." "Yes, my father is cruel," Athene replied. "He has forgotten how faithfully I helped his son Heracles in all his quests. Now Thetis has bribed him with her flattery and her caresses, and I am hateful in his eyes. Yet I think the time will soon come when he shall again call me his dear blue-eyed daughter. Help me harness the horses, Hera. I myself will go to Mount Ida to speak to my father." When Zeus became aware of her intentions, he scowled and bade his messenger Iris, fleet as the wind, halt the chariot with the two goddesses as it was passing through the foremost gate of Olympus. When they heard his command, they turned back. Soon after, Zeus himself appeared in his thunder chariot, and the mountain of gods quaked at his coming. He did not relent to his wife and his daughter, though both pleaded with him. "The Trojans shall win a far greater victory tomorrow," he said to Hera. "Great Hector shall not rest from battle until the Argives fight at the very rudders of their ships, and Achilles rises in his house at their clamor. This is the will of fate." Hera fell silent, and her face was sad. It was dusk, and the fight around the ships died down. Hector summoned his warriors to one side of the battlefield. They sat in council near the waters of the Scamander. "Had night not come," he said, "the enemy would be destroyed by now. But even though darkness has overtaken us, let us not return to the city. Some shall go and bring from it horned cattle and sheep, wine and bread. Watchfires will protect us from sudden attack while we eat or tend our wounds. And at break of day, we will renew the onslaught against the ships. Then we shall see whether Diomedes thrusts me from the wall, or whether I strip his dead body of its armor." A wave of applause ran through the ranks of the Trojans. They did as he had counseled. All night they rested, and many fires were lit. 50 at a time, they regaled themselves with food and wine. Their horses stood near the harness and fed on spelt and barley. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.